Most mornings, before I do anything else, I paint. Watercolor specifically. And the reason that I do it is a perfect way for me to ground myself in who I am and to be very intentional about how I spend my time. Watercolor has been a real lifesaver for me for many years. Whenever I am feeling out of sorts and I need to center myself, I come back to my art. And art for me isn't always about creating a perfect picture or a perfect anything for that matter. Sometimes it's just touching the brushes, touching the water, touching the pigments, and just seeing what happens. I love the experimentation of watercolor, and I have found it to be one of my favorite analog activities. It is my go-to whenever I need to get back to me. I like to call that going back to center. Friends will hear me say that every now and then, where I'm like, I need to go back to center. And they know for me, that's either going outside and taking a walk, listening to the birds, being out in nature, or I'm going to be making some art and I'm probably going to pull out some watercolors. What I like to do most mornings is I have easily about 3 or 4, that's a lie, 4 or 5 different sketchbooks that have different types of things in them. And I will pull out at least 1 or 2 of them that I can watercolor in. I'm a little impatient when it comes to letting things dry, which is why I will work in anywhere between 2 to 3 different sketchbooks at any given time. And what I love about using watercolor for this is the ability to build layers and to play around in one. I could be more serious in one sketchbook versus another. Or if I'm participating in a workshop, I've got that particular notebook full of different paintings and marks. But when I am focused on having a very intentional day, I will just make marks on paper. My favorite thing to do is watercolor circles, and it'll just be color. I like to see how the water reacts to the pigment that I put in it. If I put more in, how is it going to dry? You learn a lot about what you can and cannot do with watercolor simply by playing around with it. It isn't about perfection, and that's the beauty of having an intentional practice, is that it isn't about perfection, it's about the practice. It's about showing up and doing this because it brings you joy. And that's what I'm always looking for, is that core for me is joy. How do I get there? So when I'm feeling out of sorts or I catch myself scrolling, because the only time that I'm scrolling on social media is that I'm looking for something. I'm looking for inspiration. I'm looking for something that's going to call me. And I don't always find it. And you can spend, or I'll talk about me, I can waste a lot of time just scrolling, looking at other people's lives and looking at what other people are creating. And then that stops me from creating my own thing. So by doing this practice in the morning of just picking up some paint, some water, and some paint, water, paper, and a brush, picking that up and just put some marks on paper. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I found that those circles are great for me to use to create little things that I can put inside some of my notebooks, some of my art journals, or just to create little tags or whatever. It doesn't make a difference, but it's just that I'm doing it. I'm trying something out. I'm experimenting. I'm allowing myself to do an activity with intention. That's the biggest thing for me. What am I doing with intention? What am I getting out of this? And that is what that type of morning activity does for me. It just grounds me in who I am. And you don't need a whole lot to get started with any type of art practice. Don't let people fool you into thinking that you need all of these fancy tools, fancy papers, or anything like that. Go and get a very inexpensive, cheap watercolor notebook watercolor papers. Don't spend a whole bunch of money. Seriously, you can find some pads for $5-10. Get an inexpensive set of brushes, especially if you're just going to experiment. Inexpensive set of watercolor pans just to get you started. The whole point is to get into the practice. And if you find that this is something that you enjoy, that's when you go and invest in maybe 1 or 2 really good watercolor brushes. Again, do not go and spend hundreds of dollars getting a whole bunch of stuff because that's what people have told you. Oh, well, you need to get this if you're a serious artist. Everybody's an artist. Everyone. We stopped believing we were artists when we were younger, when someone would tell you your drawing wasn't good enough. We're all artists. Everybody. And if you're practicing at it, that's how you become a better artist. I am not a master watercolorist. I'm not. I think I'm decent, but not a master at it. I still find myself wanting to rip up a page because it doesn't look exactly like I think it should look, which is why I will not say that I am a specific type of artist. If anything, I'm a mixed media artist. I have so many art supplies, y'all. I have so many art supplies because I'm an artist at my core, at my heart. So I have learned that with watercolor, you can put other things on top of it. Oil pastels, you've got tempera paint. I'm looking at some Posca pens over here, acrylic markers, anything. Ink, pen and ink. It's another one of my favorite things. I love doing calligraphy. I do watercolor calligraphy. Did it for years, painting people's words of the year. So, but I didn't use the most expensive things to do it because it doesn't matter what the supplies are. It's all about what do you do to get better at it. I work at being a better artist. Morning intentional routines really help me to do that first. Helps me to quiet my mind, helps me to see what is important to me. And while I enjoy looking at other artists' work and really, what's the word? Consuming is not the right word. I like being inspired by what I see other people do, but I try not to spend so much time looking at what every other artist is creating, because that'll stop me from seeing what I can do, because now I'm in a comparison rut and I don't want to get there. I don't want to compare one person's method to mine. I have a way of working, they have a way of working, but can I get inspired by it? That's another thing too, is don't look at what someone else is doing and think, oh no, I'm not any good at that. I'm not even going to try. Try. The trying is part of the practice. Finding a time to do it. Morning works best for me before everything starts happening. It's a great thing to do. And I'm going to keep on doing it. You know, I love watercolor, but I do love other paint mediums. I'm experimenting with gouache. I'm experimenting with acrylics again. I used to use a bunch of acrylics when I was in high school and college. And I want to get back to using all of this stuff in a different way. It's how can I use all those things together, you know? But for me, it's always about the intentional practice and being able to find out who I am through that medium. And I would love to know, what do you do when you're setting yourself up for an intentional morning? What is your activity? What's your thing that you like to try? I would love to know. Share with me in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe if you have not already. And I hope you'll just continue to join me on this journey as I pursue doing more analog activities to get more into who I am as I try to stay off of these screens a little bit more. Love to have you along for the journey.